Okay. All right. Okay. Almost there. Let's get started. Even though my, for some reason, two of my stream decks have decided to go to sleep. I think it's going to take a hard reset after an update. It's just one of those things. It'll be fine by this afternoon. I'm still here. I drove all night just to be with you guys. Hello. I was in LA singing last night about midnight, and then I got in this morning about 6:30 because I had to pull over twice to take a nap because I'm sensible. I think that's there's a certain amount of wisdom in that. Man's got to know his limitations. So I pulled over a couple times and slept. I have to say I set an alarm when I was in my car while I was sleeping or whatever, and I pulled over, went to a rest stop, and all the bathrooms are locked. That makes sense. So being yeah. So, anyways, I moved. It's always weird when it was mostly sleepers, and I still feel weird falling asleep with other cars nearby. It's a strange thing. But I don't know if that's better or safer in any way, theoretically, than driving off a side road in the middle of nowhere and just falling asleep. Anyways, it's just yeah. Did you wee on the wall? No, if you'd like to know, I walked out into rattlesnake land and used I weed. Thank you for asking. If you're concerned, chat room is very concerned about the storyline behind this. It's you worry about me? Don't. I believe me. I have a strategy, and a lot of times after a show, I'm so fucking wound up. I can't go to sleep for 3 hours, 4 hours anyways, even if I stayed put. So it's usually not a problem. And if it's at all a problem, I take a nap. Not weed. We plural. Or sorry, we past tense. We ed. Yeah. What about Ivanka? We'll get there in a second. I think we should just jump straight in, quite frankly, because it's hilarious. Hold on one second. Stretch this out and go to here. Now, I'm going to roll back on some of this stuff. Let's see. Because we're getting a lot of Deutsche Bank stuff coming out of Ivanka's testimony. Probably the most precise testimony about Deutsche Bank we've heard of so far. I'm sure Eric and Don talked about it a little bit, but definitely the most sort of direct examination. Let's see. Then you go to after she, yeah. So they started out with this business, which I find hilarious. And it goes backwards. So we'll be going up to go down or whatever. Oh, yes. Ivanka Trump enters. She's wearing a dark suit and a white shirt. She ascends the witness stand and is sworn in. It sounds like she floated in. Louis Solomon, the state lawyer questioning Trump, starts with her educational background, talks about who she is. She's whispering, so they tell her to speak up. She's smiling while delivering her answers, which echoes Don Jr. or whatever. They're just trying to charm offensive their way through it. And the reason she's smiling and kind of, oh, yes, I know this, and we did this, and da-da-da, is because they know that she and Don are, Don's dumb, but Ivanka isn't. They're both stupid, but she's not dumb. And they know that they're already past the fraud charge part of this, and they're in the damages section of this. And how the judge feels about them could very well affect how much money they lose in this process. So the smile offensive, yeah, Don Jr. and Ivanka are both, we're trying to like, we're just we're screwed. I don't know, we trusted some people and stuff. It wasn't our fault. We weren't. Okay, and so in Don Jr.'s case, he comes across as a dick, and like I said, with every joke he told, he cost his dad $1 million per word. Ivanka is trying a similar kind of charm offensive where she's just like being pleasant on the stand and all that. That didn't last long, apparently, though. Let's see. Ivanka was just asked about the major circumstance that separates her from her brothers, her lack of involvement with the Trump organization since her father took the White House. She says she does not believe she's done any work for the company since January of 2017. She doesn't believe she's done any. Whew. That's not a good answer. Ivanka has been asked about her involvement in Doral, her father's largest golf course. This is the one they have the most paperwork on because there's this, it's just, well, he had to personally guarantee the loan on Doral. And it's a resort near Miami. Trump bought it for $150 million in 2012 with money he didn't have. The resort is a big money loser, and Trump has spent a lot of money rehabbing it. Through 2018, his losses have totaled $162.3 million, according to Trump's tax records, which were obtained by the Times a few years ago. Separately, Trump has pumped more than $200 million in cash into the property. And I think the question that we're all asking is, from where? Where the fuck is this money coming from? Because he ain't got it. He's lost $162 million on it, and he's pumped 200 in. Doral is starting to look like the car wash in Breaking Bad. So how the fuck did they end up paying for this? Well, Ivanka testifies that her husband, Jared Kushner, who also has some hinky real estate deals, introduced her to an important contact at Deutsche Bank, Rosemary Fraubrugge. Trump says that she heard that Vrablick was a formidable banker with a lot of experience and says she was happy to make the connection with her. She said the key formation of that relationship, loans the company received from the bank were one of the key things in the issue in state. The attorney general says that they used fraudulent financial statements to obtain favorable returns on the loans. And this is where they're getting to the fact that they went from the regular loan department at Deutsche Bank, which is where all the plebes would have to do, to this special wealth management group that can play fucking a shell game with foreign funds all they fucking want. And caters to ultra wealthy people, and you get a lower interest rate and all kinds of shit, which Trump did not deserve. This is basically like him using a Forbes article to get to the front of the line. Ivanka sounds polished as she describes Trump's organization interested in Doral. The reason we bought the property is because we believed in its potential to be something better than it was. Well, you were wrong, dum-dum. You were wrong to the tune of, I don't know if they're adding up the losses and the cost of what he pumped into it, but somewhere around $363 million above and beyond the price of paying for the fucking thing. What a dump. Our goal was to reposition it as a luxury golf resort in South Florida, which it ain't. We're seeing that during the Doral deal, Ivanka offered to send her father's recent financial statement. Maybe you should take a look at this piece of fraud we put together. As an officer of the company speaking to a lender, oh fuck. Shit. My name is, oh dear. Echoing her brother, who was also confronted with old emails in which he seemed to use the annual financial statements in a deal, Trump says she has no memory of the email. Well, it doesn't matter because it's real. Because the metadata can prove, unlike the Hunter Biden laptop shit, for example, that it came from your servers. That's where they got it from. You turned it over, fuckhead. This is not like they found a fucking hard drive or somebody shopped it to every FBI office in the fucking country. They responded to a subpoena with documents. That's real. Okay. The Trump Doral Golf Club bills itself as pure golf luxury, which I gotta say sounds fucking dumb. Like, I get that, golf is a high end thing, but pure golf luxury just sounds fucking goofy. It has all the like marketing like flavor of all nude. So they're more than nude. Oh yeah, they're totally all nude. I see. So at this club, they're nude, but at your club, they're all nude. Yes, they are. I see. And so this place is a luxury golf course. Yes, this is pure golf luxury. So what's the difference? Well, first of all, we instead of saying luxury golf course, we say pure golf and luxury in that order. We just picked three words we like and that don't have to mean anything when they're in advertisements, and we use them together. Crisscrossed by lagoons, reed alligators, and waterways, the Miami-based club was named to Golf Digest list of America's 100 greatest public courses. America's 100 greatest public courses. Okay, first of all, how much do you pay Golf Digest to buy your way onto that list? Secondly, great. You're of the two big golf courses in every state, you're one of them. Donald set his eye on the property in 2011 after it had fallen into bankruptcy. To secure the $125 million loan needed to buy the course, Mr. Trump and his daughter Ivanka negotiated a deal with Deutsche Bank. After a protracted back and forth, the bank issued the loan in 2012, but required Mr. Trump to personally guarantee it. This is why he has thrown $200 million into it from God knows fucking where to keep it afloat. Other people's money, by the way, loans upon loans upon loans to keep this fucking thing afloat, because he personally is on the hook for $125 million that he fucking doesn't have. Yeah. All right. Then she pores over a document related to the rate on the loan. The judge advises her that it's easier to look at the screen where they highlight the portion of the document they're asking about. This is typical of the judge, who likes to interact in a friendly way with a witness if he can. It was not possible with Trump on Monday. Chris Keiss, one of Donald Trump's lawyers, is making an objection, saying the documents from 2011 are not relevant. This is one reason why Ivanka Trump is not a defendant. Actions the Attorney General found relevant were deemed by an appeals court to be too old to be included in the case. Yeah, no. You can't be charged for it, but that doesn't mean it can't be germane to the case. Just because you can't factor it in and you can't be penalized for it doesn't mean the crimes you committed before. This isn't a criminal case. This is a civil trial. So you can use shit going way back. We know you were a crook back then. It's too late to charge you with it, but there it is. It's actually a very in-depth question whether a 9% debt yield was an aggressive assumption in 2011. And Perry's it's based on the document she's being shown. She says she's not sure what she's being asked about to an apples-to-apples comparison, which is arcane, but to remark on the fluency of her testimony, she still seems very comfortable. Okay. One division of the Deutsche Bank offered less favorable terms for financing Doral. The Attorney General has said that Donald Trump's fortune changed when he started dealing with the private wealth management division, which caters to ultra-wealthy clients and is a money laundering division of Deutsche Bank. This is where all the money from like Russian oligarchs and Chinese oligarchs and fucking Indian oligarchs and fucking African warlords, where money starts getting bumped around in the Bank of Cyprus and Deutsche Bank in this kind of shit. Because it's like, hey, raise me some money and I don't care, just I gotta put it in some legit channels. Do that. Yeah. With that division, Attorney General Letitia James said Trump's personal financial statements carried weight. It's clear Ivanka was deeply involved in the financing of Doral and the old post office in Washington that became Trump International Hotel. She says she doesn't remember much. She says, I don't recall, or a version of it, multiple times. I remarked earlier how Ivanka's language when discussing Doral was polished enough for a boardroom or brochure. We've now been shown emails from more than a decade ago, and the similarity to the language used in 2011 is striking. That's sticking to your story. We're looking at proposed loan terms from Deutsche Bank, which require the Trump organization to maintain a minimum net worth of $3 billion, excluding any brand value. So Trump has to be, if his net worth drops below $3 billion, which it arguably has never been, then they can snatch the loan back. That's what this is. Trump Organization to maintain a minimum net worth of $3 billion, excluding any brand value. This writ large is where the Attorney General's case comes from. That the loan terms were predicated on a certain net worth and that Donald Trump's annual financial statements were submitted each year to uphold these terms. So they kept raising it to try it, and he was using it to get more money out of Deutsche Bank. He's like, oh yeah, not only are we meeting the $3 billion threshold, we're double that. Fuck. And because there was this rolling loan, and because of this Vrablik lady's engagement in this, and because in for a penny, in for a pound, Deutsche Bank was like, fuck, if this dude, this is where the bank has to, is at this point rooting for you to make it, because if they admit they fell for this bullshit, the whole thing falls apart. Everybody loses their job. So people start protecting you. This goes to the BRICS currency that's going to be pegged to the US dollar, which is the dumbest fucking thing. That was one of the things we're proposing, was the BRICS crypto would be pegged to the US dollar. If you're trying to destroy the US dollar, you can't peg your currency to it, because if it goes down, so do you. This is the same kind of shit. So, we've now seen more notable comments from Ivanka in this case, remarking on the generosity of the loan terms here. It doesn't get better than this, Ivanka said of the terms in 2011. Let's discuss ASAP. One of Donald Trump's lawyers, Alina Habba, is objecting, saying it appears the email was never sent. I never heard that objection before. Even though Ivanka has been subdued on the witness stand, the attorneys have come to court today ready to fight with one another. The 6 weeks of the trial have clearly taken a toll on them and their patience. The lawyers are arguing about the relevance of this evidence. Kais and Alina Habba, two of Trump's lawyers, saying these deals are irrelevant. Louis Solomon, the state lawyer, retorts Ivanka Trump is negotiating the deal from top to bottom and adds that its terms are fundamental to the case, which is that they always did this, and she was part and parcel to all of the terms of his deals require him to maintain a net worth above $3 billion, which he doesn't fucking have. And that's always, this is where it goes to the statute of limitations is no longer relevant, because these motherfuckers re-up this lie every fucking year because they had to. And because Trump thought, because he's an arrogant dickhead, that he thought because he's getting away with it already, they bought the 3 million, maybe they'll buy 5. Shit, they'll buy 7. Tell him it's 9. Like that, and he keeps gacking this shit up. And then if Deutsche Bank recognizes that net worth as $5 billion, which again, they don't fucking have, they can use that to get more money out of Deutsche Bank. Well, if you guys are seeing the $5 billion and you're signing off on it, you think, well, then obviously we can borrow another $500 million to patch holes in shit. That's where the fucking $200 million for Doral came from. There's no way you sell Doral for what they put into it. No fucking way. That money went into a chipper shredder. There's just no call for it. Anyways, Attorney General's case is bolstered by documents, and Eric Trump and Ivanka, both cautious and precise witnesses, have been confronted with evidence intended to contradict them. Eric refused to back down, rejecting what the evidence seemed to indicate. Ivanka's been defiant at times too, but more willing to forfeit when the evidence was clearly indicates her involvement and her knowledge of the subject. And that's the idea that she can't play dumb in front of the court. Eric can. Eric comes across as dumb. There's a real belief, I think, by this judge that Eric is a fucking idiot. Whereas Ivanka is not going to be able to play dumb. But she's not involved in the case, so every problem that comes up because of her testimony doesn't affect her. She's no longer part of the company, and she and her husband are fucking set for life. That $3 billion they got from the Saudis and all that shit, and part and parcel to that was probably a small negotiated deal for Trump to keep him afloat through the Live Golf Tournament and other Saudi funds. Like, hey, since that I wouldn't doubt if some of the Saudi wealth fund that Kushner runs has bounced a couple of bucks, literally it's $1 trillion, $1 billion exchange. So like $3 billion. So maybe $20 million here and there goes into Trump something or other, right? And since Ivanka Trump, she still uses her maiden name, that if there's a Trump company, nobody will really be the wiser for one of these LLCs that he throws together, which is why they're flipping out about the fucking Biden LLCs, which is just dumb. Ivanka Trump is asked about the annual financial statement. She says, as her brothers did, that she was not involved and does not know which valuations it took into account. Is again asked about her knowledge of the financial statement. She echoes Eric, saying it should be obvious that Donald Trump's business would generate such documents. I would assume he would have personal financial statements. Those weren't things that I was privy to. They took a 15-minute break. Right before the break, Ivanka Trump appeared to be getting annoyed at the questions about her father's financial statements. Several times she told the Attorney General's lawyer, Louis Solomon, that she had given him exactly the same answers a year and a half ago, but this pushback was delivered with a smile while her fathers and brothers used scowls and were shitty. We're back. The judge is on the bench. They held a front bar rather than a sidebar. I don't know why this is a point, because there's no jury. The only reason you sidebar is so the jury can't hear it. So front bar is just approach the bench. I don't know. I don't think Trump is there today. I don't think he's watching. Seems almost personally offended by the defense's objection that an email had not been sent. He just showed an exhibit that made clear that it was. The objection has been withdrawn. Oh, God. Fucking how. This was never an email. Look, it says draft. Yeah, here's the draft version. There's the one that was sent. This is the one we're using. Oh, it was in the draft folder. Yeah, it was also in the sent folder. It got worse in the sent folder. Fuck. All right, well, withdrawn. So stupid. Okay, then we're looking at Deutsche Bank loan terms, which related to the Trump International Hotel and Tower in Chicago, where he has allegedly a lot of secret partners. And that might be part of this whole Deutsche Bank shit. The judge interjects to correct the Attorney General's lawyer who misread a word when reading an exhibit. This happened often during the trial and shows how closely he's following the testimony. We're looking at an email exchange between Ivanka and a banker at Deutsche Bank, Rosemary Vrablik, Frau Brucke. And the exchange shows her offering the Trump Organization improved loan terms and Trump thanking her profusely, saying, "You're the best, Rosemary. Thanks for giving us ridiculous terms on a loan we don't deserve for millions and millions of dollars, and God knows where those fucking funds are going to go. They're not going into the property we're talking about. We'll just siphon them off." After looking over an exhibit on the old post office, Ivanka Trump holds it up, laughing, and says, "It brings back a lot of memories." That's not a... The Attorney General's lawyer says she made the same statement a year and a half ago. We're flown from Chicago to D.C. to hear Ivanka discuss the loan that financed Trump's old building known as the old post office, which he turned into a hotel, which was basically just a money laundering thing for foreign nationals who wanted to buy out floors of it to pay off Trump while he was in office. She's the fourth member of her testimony. Were we at the top of this? Hello. It's Stepford Wife Day. Yep. So this is the update. This is our latest update, 32 minutes ago. So they might have taken a break or what have you. There you go. Yes, Jack Miller. Did I miss anything? Did you miss anything? Good Lord, man. Also, let me check on something because I got to close this down and down it here, and I got to open this guy up. 1 second. Guessed, I don't know. I didn't get a chance to because I was restarting to check and see if hanging waiting on Bossman. There we go. Me. I don't know if I don't know if Phil's gonna make it today. Hold on. Crossing the border. 1 hour to live in hotel might be tight, but I think I can make it. Okay. Yeah, so we'll see if he makes it in time. If he doesn't, that's okay. I may, because I drove all night, cut the show short and just go sleep for the afternoon show because there's going to be a shit ton of stuff to cover this afternoon as well. But one of the things we'll point out is this business. Last night, so you know all that shit about Trump doing well in these swing states and this New York Times poll where they asked the same amount of Republicans and Democrats how they felt about Biden versus Trump. And magically, Trump is doing well in these areas where you have 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats or whatever, 100 of each or 200 of each, whatever, and you're comparing those two groups of people. Where in states, by the way, where for every 100 Republicans right now, there are somewhere in the order of 130 to 150 to sometimes 200 Democrats. So by sheer number of reliable voters in general, that's why you're seeing this stuff. The polls are completely fucked up because they're trying to find a his organization's been paying for polls like crazy lately to try and help him out during this. So that's another thing entirely. But in all honesty, you can't have a poll that says we asked 50 of this group and 50 of this group when there are a lot more of this group in general than there are of this group. It's stupid. So again, that's why I didn't sweat it. If you'll notice, while everyone was jumping through their shirt about the polls, about Trump's got he's gonna win these 5 states. You're like, you didn't see me sweating at all, did you? Not a touch. Was I worried? No. And here's why. Because the voters are recognizing the gains that they are seeing. And the folks that are being polled about this stuff are the people who pick up the phone. And that's not a lot of people. A lot of people increasingly are like, fuck off. But I will say, if anybody calls you and polls you about this, give them an earful. That said, this is how it's turning out. And it's because women are 51/52% of the electorate. And the Republicans have launched a feverish attack on their reproductive rights. And with few or no exceptions in a lot of cases, if they can get away with it. Anywhere they think they can get away with no exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother, for example, they will absolutely steamroll it. With Mike Johnson being their choice for speaker, that choice is even more stark. So voters are reacting accordingly. And you see, like, Republicans in hyper red counties getting on, state legislatures, which is part of this. But then Beshear wins in Kentucky as the governor. So, here you go. Ohio voters added the right to abortion into the state constitution. So women have the right to an abortion. It's in the Ohio. This is fucking Jim Jordan's state, goddammit. This is why Ohio used to be a swing state, and it stopped being a swing state because Republicans decided Ohio and Florida are the swing states, so we're gonna take over the state legislatures, and we're gonna flood those states with as much advocacy and right-wing talk radio and shit as we possibly can, and drift the vote in those two states. The problem was, once they did that, they drove away all the people, or drove them underground where they just don't listen to that shit. But they drove away a lot of the people who are like, I don't want to fucking live in this dump. And they moved to other places and turned them into swing states. Yeah, Jordan ain't shit in Ohio. He's just his little district. I agree. But he's got an outsized amount of control in the House, even still. And it is not indicative of the state as a whole. And that is increasing because of their overreach in this area. And next year, this is why they're going to lose the House. This is why that tenuous grip on the House that they have is going to go away. Andy Beshear keeps it Democratic in Kentucky, and especially around abortion rights. And Glenn Youngkin, who's one of their white horses, when they all talk about how Biden's not going to be the nominee and Michelle Obama's going to ride in and take over, all that bullshit they're telling everybody, what they're really talking about is how scared they are that Trump is losing it, and that Youngkin is going to have to be the guy that, because nobody likes DeSantis, and they're like, wow, this Youngkin dude. Which, by the way, the problem with Youngkin's name on a presidential level is that it sounds like yokel to enough people. That's enough to keep him from winning. Sorry. But you can tell by, like, you could argue that, Clinton versus Trump as names are a wash. And so sexism cost her a good portion of the votes. That and a bunch of faux aggressive assholes who seem to be all of a sudden rethinking their positions about a bunch of shit. that would have favored Hillary Clinton. But we'll get to that again, no doubt. But Glenn Youngkin failed to gain control of the state legislature. It means he'll not be able to pass his 15-week limit on abortions. And it says cast a shadow over a potential 2024 presidential bid. Not really. It just lets you know it's not fucking gonna happen. Groups in Arizona, Florida, Nevada, Colorado, South Dakota are all in the process of getting abortion rights measures on the ballot for next year's elections. One advocate told Axios that is going to be a turning point, especially where they codify abortion rights like they did in Ohio in a bunch of these swing states. It's interesting because of the win in Ohio. I'm curious to see if the Republicans there will try to get it struck next year and then drive the same voters to the polls, or if they're counting on, well, it'll just sit there and we'll just pass limits on it, and our limits will be the strongest in the country, whatever the fuck. We'll just stranglehold you can have the right, but we'll make it impossible to implement, right? And that's what they're going to have to shoot for in Ohio now that it's going to be in the Constitution. But this, as it should be, is a message to Republicans that the writing is on the wall. And especially this bullshit where they're trying to just flat out deny women reproductive rights. I showed you the number of the infant mortality deaths going up, birth, like related directly to births, and all of it, the statistical difference between 2 years ago and now of both like maternal deaths and the deaths of children is all just babies that weren't viable, that were technically born and then died. That's what like the whole storyline was in fucking Virginia, and why they're always saying they kill some babies after birth. Like, no, motherfucker, these babies were born with no lungs, with half a brain, with their heart outside their body, with their organs fused together. They were never going to survive. So instead of having a therapeutic abortion so they could protect the woman's ability to have a baby in the future, the woman has to go through the process of giving birth to a child that's not going to make it and sit there for 10 minutes while it dies because it can't breathe and because its heart will stop working. It's fucking sad. And to drag women through this because Jesus wants them to be punished somehow or some nonsense, just fucking gross. It's gross. And the conversation about this, like every time Trump brings up, you can even kill a baby after birth, like, get the fuck out of here. But that is the thing that is driving this vote, because most people know better. There's so many, especially there's Southern women and rural women throughout the country that have dealt with this kind of shit, birth defects and like non-viable fetuses and all that stuff. They know somebody who went through this, and now they know somebody who had to go through the whole fucking process, couldn't do anything about it, and maybe can never have a fucking kid again because they were forced to carry it to term. And like, that shit's got to stop. And that's what's moving this. That recognition across the board in a lot of places is that recognition in of itself. Because this fucking illusion that women want elective abortions, like, I don't know, I don't want to be pregnant anymore, fuck it, at 8.5 months or something, which is the story they actually tell, which is just tells you their opinion of women in the first fucking place, is grotesque. And yeah, it's cruelty, absolutely. And so that's what's pushing a lot of this. And like, it's awful, and fuck them. And it's going to cost them the House and the Senate, and it's going to cost them a lot of state houses they don't think they're going to lose otherwise. But only if people run like as Democrats in these purple states, in these states that give the illusion of being red. Because a lot of these areas, a lot of the reason why the state legislatures are red is because the idea is like, well, like you can have a governor like Bashir who's Democratic for the whole state of Kentucky, but you kind of just write it off that this area is red. That's not the case. If Bashir won as governor, there's a bunch of places with a bunch of fucking voters who will vote for a state legislator who's like a run-of-the-mill working class Democrat, without a, somebody they can't paint with the fucking Marxist brush or whatever whatever storyline they want to tell. Like you're a fucking communist because you want to continue S-chip. That kind of shit. If somebody runs, as a middle-of-the-road Democrat in those areas, they'll fucking win. They just have to run, though. So, anyways, this is amazing, and this is more important than any other poll that you've seen, because this is indicative of where the vote is going. This is what's material. This is the votes being cast and the votes being counted. This is not people on the fucking phone telling you one thing over the other. This is a Biden victory next year. This is the Democrats retaining the House. Regaining the House and retaining the Senate. That's what this is. Yeah. My Kentucky accent is coming through. Well, that happens when I have to talk about the place. Because I used to joke that I couldn't call my mom at work if I called my mom in Kentucky. I'm like, hi, may I speak to Chris Sparks, please? They would go, sorry, who's this? What is this pertaining to? But I'm like, hey, may I speak to Chris Sparks, please? They're like, I'll put you right through. Yes, Patricia, you should feel good, because this is the way this shit is going to go. Know it, love it, feel it, understand it. Also, can I, there's all this shit, that Republicans don't want to dodge. And they want to dodge the story on a bunch of these things. Let me see if I can get this. Yeah. A couple of things. All right. There are a couple stories that hit this morning that, I mean, in general, if you asked anybody, they wouldn't know it. They wouldn't think it. And there's a myriad of reasons why. Largely 2020 and the money that was infused into the economy, because it was sent to anybody who asked for it or needed it, tended to go towards people who paid down their debt. Okay. So, and then the temporary points where they might have been behind on something, they had a cushion. They had effectively a $3,000 or $6,000 cushion because of the pandemic payouts that allowed people this, like, oh shit, I could start catching up on my stuff and get, rebuild credit or whatever the hell. And that's why this story I found particularly fascinating. This is the share of Americans with debt in collection is at historic lows. Look at 2005, 2010. We're talking about almost 15% of Americans in 2012, 2013. And by the way, this is shit that the Obama administration had to deal with, because everybody blamed this jump right here was because people were fucked because of 2008. This lump that came up in 2008. See that? That's a doop. That whole bump up. That's a lot of people's lives. You're going from 11, 12% around here, like 13% to nearly 15%. That's a lot of human beings. It's down to 4.7% right now. That's fucking amazing. The share of Americans who have debt in collections is hovering at a historic low, according to data from the New York Fed on Tuesday. It's an encouraging sign that there are some signals of weakness in household finances, like rising credit card delinquencies. People are paying their bills. Having debt, and that's the other thing, is people are using debt and managing it. So even as like rising credit card balances go up, people are still able to make the payments. People aren't fucking stupid. They're managing a lot better. Yeah. And now there's just few of it going into collections, and that's great for everybody in general. It's also one of the things that keeps the interest rates from spiking, because you got a bunch of companies that lend out money that aren't losing a shit ton of money because there's 10% fewer people in collections than there were, 12 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah. So that's, overall pretty cool. And then we go to back to yeah. The Axios covering her. This will be the truncated thing of what we did. We'll jump back in, by the way. Biden and Xi are preparing to restart military to military channels because China's coming hat in hand. They know they can't win in Taiwan. They wouldn't even try because Taiwan would literally beat the Chinese military by themselves. And it would cost Xi Jinping 1 million fighters if they tried to cross the water. They know this. This is all silly. It's not going to go anywhere, by the way. We're watching China on a hard fade. This is going to be fits and starts until they basically collapse. The economy of China is about the same size as Japan right now. And when Japan, they keep talking about the Japanification of the Chinese economy, which is, going back to like 1990s Japan, where they just it took them, 20 years to try and recover from the crash that happened. When that happened, Japan had friends in the world. Japan went through all this shit, and we liked them. The World Bank liked them. They had options. China has none. There is no backup. When Japan came, the reason why Japan had this horrible economic crash and yet was still able to innovate and grow and build was because they had credit elsewhere. They were, it was recognized that this is just related to a bunch of other shit, kind of semi out of their control. None of it's the fault of the people. So loans, international loans, money flowing into Japan was easier to get. None of that is happening. As a matter of fact, the fucking run on cash that is leaving China right now is amazing. Hold on. Let's see if I can show you the yeah, here you go. Let me show you a couple of things. This is, and I don't like. I want you to. The only reason I'm showing you these things is because I want you to remember this shit when Maria Bartiromo starts throwing around the China's going to eat our lunch bullshit. Yeah, the 1990s in Japan is often called the lost decade. Exactly, and again, they had fucking friends. They had support. China doesn't have any because they've just basically, first of all, they've been fucking with foreigners, Waiguoren, outsiders, which is what their word for foreigners means. Foreigner in English basically means stranger, like you're different. You're from someplace and they might do stuff, but it's not negative. It's just you are. It's just descriptive. Waiguoren means literally outside the country person. Mien, outside. Guo is country. Ren is person. Waiguoren is outsider, outside person. It's very distinct. It's fuck off language. So, all right, yes, hit that like, by the way. And you're watching Housemarque's Mornings Mega Worldwide. It's hump day. And I drove all night to come back and do this show. So like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, maybe super chat. I don't know if you think the show was worth it today because it's kind of fun. And I was right again on a bunch of shit, and I continue to be. Let me show you something real quick. So the next time Maria Bartiromo starts flapping her overinflated marzipan fucking lips, China suffers its first foreign investment deficit as U.S. tensions and anti-spying laws spark a Western exodus. A Western exodus. Everybody's bugging the fuck out. Money first. Oh, thank you very much. I did drive all night. That is true. We do have lots to discuss, Boss Brian. We absolutely do. As a matter of fact, let's see. We're checking on Phil to see if he's in there. We might have to bring you on later. If he doesn't make it, maybe we should jump in and have you join me. Could tell Andrea, how about this? Boston Brian, if you want to jump in for the second hour, we can let Phil take a break because he's been traveling, and then I'll see if I can get him on for a special report Friday. Does that work? Let's try and do that. Because I mean, I feel bad that he's going through there. Let me show you this. Fucking nap. I'm fucking nap. I'm awake, man. All right, check this out though. First foreign investment deficit as U.S. tensions and anti-spying laws under the Biden administration, who apparently are being fucking, I guess, what did China pay for? What are they getting from the Biden administration? What are they blackmailing Biden into doing? Skull fucking them on the front page of every fucking newspaper on the goddamn planet. All right, secondly, check this shit out. Check this. China stocks see record monthly streak of foreign fund exodus. Look at this. See that little thing right there? You got little drops along the way where they drop a percentage. Everybody's leaving. That's 3 in a row. Foreign investors sell China stocks in record streak. And they've been low ever since. Look at this. It's interesting. Here they're below, right? There you go. Little bump up here. Bullshit money. Somebody trying to, find a greater sucker situation. And I'll set this up in a second. Hold on. I'll set this up so Brian could, if he can jump in. I don't know if he can. That's the other thing. I'm fairly certain, but we'll see. I'll leave the gate open, and if he wants to crawl in here, I will make it happen. That said, then check this third one out. Check this out. Hold on. Where is it? Oh, you fucker. Back up. Where was it? Shit. Hold on. I'll show you guys in a second. And the news. There you go. Oh, he's working. Wah. Okay. All right. Well, I understand. Keep working, brother. And we'll, if we have to, we'll bring you in. We might have to, bring you in at another, do we try to bring him in this afternoon for a little chit chat or some shit? I don't know. Maybe we'll do a special. Since I didn't do a show yesterday, I could do a Thursday show, a morning show, maybe. I do have a long honeydew list that I do on Thursday mornings. And it's a lot. It's the filters this Thursday. Yeah. So we'll work on it. We'll figure it out, but it's going to happen. Excellent. Okay, now. I don't need to show you that. Where are you guys? There you go. Kill you guys. There you go. This is, where are you, sons of bitches? Yeah, that's the same one. Hold on. Yeah, hold on. This was, I showed you this one already, I think. Yeah. Yeah, here you go. So the word we've heard from a bunch of places, the idea of out of 4. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, we could do a little pre-roll show. I'm sure I'm gonna have a shit ton of clips from yesterday. But if you're out at 4, I don't know, see what his work is tomorrow morning or something like that. Or we'll do a special report at 4 his time in the afternoon tomorrow. I can do that. I can make that happen. Let's do that. Okay, we'll schedule it for when you're off, whenever you get off work, Boston Brian, tomorrow. We'll do an early show then. It won't be a morning show. It'll be in the afternoon. It'll be good. We'll have plenty. Okay, this will work. All right, now I got it. All right, now let's go back to this guy right here. China's first deficit in foreign investment signals West de-risking pressure. People are fucking off. China recorded its first ever quarterly deficit in foreign direct investment, according to a balance of payments data underscoring capital outflow pressure and Beijing's challenge in wooing overseas companies in the wake of de-risking move by Western governments. Direct investment liabilities, a broad measure of the FDI that includes foreign companies' retained earnings in China, were a deficit of 11.8 billion during the July-September period, according to the preliminary balance of payments data. That's the first quarterly shortfall since China's foreign exchange regulator began compiling the data in 1998. which would be linked to the impact of de-risking by Western countries from China, as well as China's interest rate disadvantage. Some weaknesses in China's inward FDI may be due to multinational companies repatriating earnings. They're bugging the fuck out. The only reason, and I've said this before, the only reason why Biden is playing footsie with, or Blinken are playing footsie with China at all, just even having the ghost of these fucking meetings, is to give big U.S. firms time to get out. That's it. That's the only reason they're doing it. They're covering the exit for companies like Apple, essentially, so it doesn't affect the U.S. economy. Giant fucking companies like that. Let me check back in on the. Do we have see if we have any updates from Ivanka? Updated 10 minutes ago. Okay, here we go. Jared Kushner, Ivanka's husband, keeps getting mentioned. Lawyers for Donald Trump are starting to argue that communications between the two can't be introduced because of spousal privilege. As that objection comes up now, the judge says he'll research it during a lunch break, which starts now. Ivanka's testimony has been calm and controlled, even as the lawyers who occasionally argued with each other. But like her father, she became animated when talking about Trump Organization projects, using hand gestures like she's conducting a presentation. Is now being asked about General Services Administration meeting, and she continues to drown the specifics about the financial statements in the generalities of the proposal for developing the old post office. I don't recall them having discussed financial statements specifically. The whole meeting was mainly about our vision for the project. It was all drapes. That's all I remember. I was picking drapes and pillowcases and artwork and making everything. We were taking everything and doing fake gold leafing. That was my job. We mentioned earlier that Ivanka Trump had given an in-person presentation to the government agency that runs the old post office in Washington when it expressed concern about Donald Trump's financial statements. We're now looking at evidence that appears to show preparations for that presentation within the Trump Organization, which involved Ivanka Trump. Trump is saying that she does not recall specifically or generally that the agency had raised questions in connection with the financial statements. I recall him coming back to us with a series of questions on all sorts of elements relating to the proposal. Yeah, the fucking money. Under questioning, Ivanka Trump frequently refers to her deposition. I recall you showing me, is a phrase she uses when Louis Solomon. This is a nice trick. It makes her sound more credible without revealing much more than I don't recall would. Ivanka Trump is back. Complimenting the court IT people. She agrees, calling their work very impressive. During Keis's argument, he praises the renovation of the old post office, saying the Trump Organization transformed a hulking relic into a world-class facility. Engoron responds immediately, saying, "You're starting to sound like your client." Yeah, I mean, where the fuck do you think he gets these people? They're all butt suckers. They're just there to, blow smoke up his ass. And then, I guess, use it as a bong afterwards. Ivanka Trump remains out of the room. Lawyers are still arguing about the statute of limitations. We had heard that Trump's testimony might carry over into tomorrow. Again, the statute of limitations is on, charging and penalizing, not establishing a fucking pattern. And again, they started this shit. They re-upped it every fucking year. Here's how it works. She, in her process of dealing with the Deutsche Bank lady, is part and parcel to them creating this bullshit financial document that they establish he has more than $3 billion net worth, cash, liquid funds, actual money. Not holdings that might be worth one day. If he sells all of them at once, he can come up with this. That's not it. Then, each year he's fucking reusing the same lie and then upping it every time. He's like, no, 3. I'm worth 4. No, I'm worth 5. No, I'm worth 7. No, I'm worth 8. And in this case, taking Ivanka out of the process when she goes into the White House and having Eric fill in, being the rubber stamp dickhead who's passing along this idea that he's worth more than $3 billion, which he fucking ain't. And the reality is that if it's established in this, if they do a real accounting and say, this is what you're actually worth, all in, this is what you could actually sell your shit for, he's worth less than $2.5 billion, which means the loans that he's gotten for Doral through Deutsche Bank get snatched back. Um, that's just fucking. Oh wait, I think we have Phil in the background. I think I see him wandering around there. Hold on 1 second. Let me. That's good. He's I think he's in Lviv right now. I think maybe. Hold on 1 second. We'll figure this out because this is a. It will be awesome to have him back in here. Let me get back into Morning Guess and turn that off. I hear him. We hear him. There we go. And then I will pop him into here. And it like we're both road weary, road hard and put away wet. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to the show our dear friend Philip Ittner. Ooh, yeah.
I
Hi,
literally
buddy.
just walked in.
Yeah.
The first thing I did was throw down my bags, get online, and call you.
I greatly
I made
appreciate it.
I'm amazed I made it. We got stuck at the border for a little while. It wasn't that bad. Polish into Ukraine border. We were there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, which
Right.
all
Could
things
be
considered
worse.
is actually that bad.
Right.
But yeah, I've been going nonstop since I left LA. My visit
Yeah.
in London was far too short. But there's a doctor who you may have seen like on Steph's show, Dr. Erwin Redliner. He does MSNBC quite frequently. He runs a program here to aid children. It's the Children's Action Project, I believe. Project or program, I always forget. And he's here now in Lviv, and they're going to be handing out some school supplies and stuff like that. So he wanted me here to document it. So I agreed. So I had to be back here by tonight in order to do that tomorrow. So I haven't seen hardly any news. I've been trying to keep at least an eye on it.
Sure.
A buddy of mine who writes for the Kiev Post sent me a little thing about, I guess there is now officially armor, Ukrainian armor, is on the left bank, which would be on the eastern bank of the Dnieper River.
Right.
So the foothold that they have along the left bank, again, because the water flows south towards the Black Sea, so you consider that the left bank. There are tanks. There Ukrainian armor is on the other side, which is huge.
Yes, it is.
Huge. It's only a matter of time. I mean, there's talk, there's rumors of a Russian offensive being put together.
We've been here before, though. They've said the same shit before.
Yeah. And you know, it depends. Now, from what I've seen of Russian positions, they're more likely to be north of where the bridge is. The foothold is down south, a little south of Kherson.
Right.
And what most of where Russia has positioned its military is around Bakhmut, or even farther north near Kharkiv. So I don't know if they're going to try, if they've done some sneaky thing and they're going to try and destroy the foothold, the bridge, the little pocket that they've got on the other side of the river. If I was Russian, and if I were a Russian military commander, that's what I would be looking at.
Right.
I would not be bothering myself with Kharkiv, nor would I be bothering myself with Bakhmut. I would be trying to push Ukrainians back to the other side of the river. If that's what the offensive that Ukrainian intelligence and apparently analysts are looking at, mill bloggers and all the people who fixate on this kind of stuff, that there is a potential Russian offensive coming within days, if not weeks. If they don't try and push them back into the river, they're done. They're done.
Yeah. It doesn't matter at this point. They don't have any of the stuff to do it. They don't like, you can push all you fucking want. What they've had so far is just a meat grinder. They can throw human beings at it. But when they're up against tanks and artillery and drone strikes and all that kind of stuff, it's just, you're just wasting human life for no fucking reason. This is Vietnam. This is, an absolutely futile attack for no fucking reason other than it's a dick wagging contest for Putin right now.
It's
There,
interesting. It's interesting you say that because I got into a conversation with a friend of mine, an American friend of mine who lives here in Ukraine,
right.
and he's slightly older than I am. Uh, I was like 6 during the Vietnam War. I was like real young.
Hmm.
I don't remember the Vietnam War, but he's a good decade older than me, and he remembers the fact that everybody knew that Vietnam was lost,
Yeah.
that they had lost the war, but they were
Hmm.
so they couldn't swallow the idea of a military defeat, of a defeat in Vietnam. So they just kept. I mean, that's what the Pentagon Papers were all about, which
Right.
eventually, of course, busted a whole bunch of stuff wide open. But the Pentagon Papers, in many ways, was this the fact that the military knew that they couldn't win, and yet
Right.
they just kept saying,
Well,
you
they,
know,
I
keep,
would,
keep it
yeah.
going, keep it going,
They
keep it
couldn't
going.
win unless they did
Russians,
full. They didn't. They couldn't win unless they did full attrition. The U.S. military absolutely could have, pushed through Vietnam like butter if they just decided they were going to waste everybody along the way. They couldn't win with the civilian casualties. It was untenable, and there was no way to disengage the fighting force from the human beings that were just living there. So you're just gonna there's no there. You're fighting people who aren't in uniform, so you're just gonna all you're doing every day is making it worse for yourself because there's nothing to win in it. You know what I mean? Because you're not fighting a directed force. This is not us against the fucking British and redcoats. This is, way
yeah,
murkier. And they knew it. And could the US have fucking nuked Vietnam into oblivion? Of course. We just weren't willing to do it, and nor should we be. So they were like,
mm,
we can't win like this, is essentially what the Pentagon Papers were. And there was a bunch of areas where, fights were actually working, but they all got drawn back because it would have eventually met an area where, all right, it's 80% civilians and we're going to have to kill this group of people to do this. It's not fucking worth it. It goes to that
yeah.
whole Afghanistan idea. Afghanistan is not the fucking graveyard of empires. It's where they just gave up. They're like, we don't. What are we fighting for? Why are we doing this? There's nothing here.
Yeah.
That's what makes
And
it very
that
distinct from this.
that
I
kind
don't.
of that kind of mentality, was obvious in Vietnam, but what my, uh,
Mhm.
my American friend, who lives here we were having this discussion, and as he was the point he was trying to make, not about the kind of like insurgency war that we fought in Vietnam and how you without civilian, but the point he was trying to make, and the point I think is well taken, is that the war is lost. Russia has
Yeah.
already lost the war. There is no way that Russia wins this war. It's just not going to happen. They might take some territory, they might hold the land bridge to Crimea. That's about all they can hope for at this point.
Yep.
They've lost the war. And I've been saying that for quite some time. And this foothold that you're showing there, I think
Yeah.
that's
I'm going
the
backwards because I want to show everybody what's actually happened. So, if you can't see this, I'll play this forward.
but while you're
But
doing that, I'll just finish my thought in
yeah.
that point I keep trying to make with, and I have said for a long time that the Russians can't win this war. They can't. This kind of development, this crossing of the river and
Yeah.
putting armor on the other side of the river, and the F-16s that are coming, and that Russia is losing weapons every day while Ukraine is getting more, even with the distractions and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Russia cannot win this war, but the equivalent that my friend was making with Vietnam is it's not a matter of actual warfare, it's a mentality. They can't accept loss.
Right.
They are incapable of understanding that they cannot win this war because, of course, they're the great Russian military. So all they're doing is killing people. There's no hope for this for them to win. The
Mhm.
only question is how many more Russian lives have to die in the form of soldiers, which is sad, but I have very little compassion because drop your gun, raise your hands, and it's over for you guys.
Right.
But the other question is how many Ukrainians have to die, and that does sadden me because they're losing an entire generation plus
Right.
of people, and it's for nothing.
Which you could argue is worth it for Russia if they think they might even have a fallback decision because they've killed off the the breeding stock of another group of people. They think
Well,
like that. But
yeah,
I would argue,
wait
yeah,
9 months after the war, and you'll see a new generation of
yeah,
Ukrainians. Because
exactly.
trust me, what
Jesus.
happens in the air raid shelters and what happens when the bombs
Oh
are
yeah.
dropping, you can't go
Yeah.
anywhere. There, if
Oh
you got
yeah.
a partner close, you're
All
yeah.
yeah, exactly. I would like people to like look along this. This is the Dnipro on the top edge of this. You can see the blue line or whatever. That's the actual river. If you look below it, this is the area taken by the Ukrainians. They're all along here. They're on the other side of it, and there's one push force right here from the Russians that's doing it from this one road where there's this junction, and but they ain't doing shit. They're not doing nothing is working. The other thing too is how when you talk about how like Russia has this kind of like can't admit they're not the greatest military fighting force in the world. If that's the real motivation, but on mechanically in Putin's circle versus I will get driven out of my job and fucked into a cocked hat if this goes south,
Yeah.
which is much more present. It's like the Hamas dudes. The Hamas dudes aren't rolling into a fucking music festival and gunning people down and raping women and cutting their heads off because they're mad about something that happened 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, or 6 days ago. They're doing it because they have found a strength point and a pleasure point in doing it. They get some semblance of security and reward from it personally as a human
Mhm,
being, like because
mhm.
it's unrelatable. It's silly. Like I said, they yell Allah Akbar with the same kind of fervor as somebody yelling "Get her done" or
Let's go,
"Yeehaw" at
right.
a fucking NASCAR thing. It's all bullshit. And the same thing with Putin. Like the idea that he's definitely during COVID seems to have watched a bunch of YouTube videos where he's like, "Yes, Mother Russia," or he watched The fucking Saint with Val Kilmer and wants to be the villain in that fucking movie. Russia that is not only revered but feared, that shit from he wants to be Tretiak from fucking The Saint, or at least he did during COVID.
Well, I'm
Now
sure
it's just
no, go ahead.
self-preservation.
Yeah, it is. It is self-preservation. You're 100% right. And the sad part of it is that because of the ego and the desperate clinging to power of one man, that there are going to be tens of thousands, if not more, killed on both sides of this fight. So
Yep.
was involved. But I'm sure I've spoken to you in the past about my buddy who's a Russian journalist,
Hmm.
and he has contacts within Putin's basic secret service, presidential security force, which is
Right.
as large as the secret service. It's not it's a big organization with thousands of guys.
Right.
And he hearing from his sources within the presidential protection service that all during COVID they lost control of who could come and see Putin because Putin was in his bunker in isolation because he was deathly afraid of COVID,
Right.
and he was holding only Zoom meetings with people.
Right.
So whereas in the past, kind of his entourage, his close circle could in some ways control who got access to him
Hmm.
because he was doing everything virtually. They're like, we don't know who he's talking to. We
Right.
have no idea. And he's getting crazier and crazier and stir crazier and stir
Hmm.
crazy. I absolutely think a big chunk of this war is because he lost his marbles during that period of time.
Right.
So it's sad that it's one man that's doing it, but
Yep. But everybody
yeah.
around him, what I'm kind of saying is that I'm a big believer in people do what's right in fucking front of them. They can, a
Mhm.
lot of people will gin up a bullshit. Well, this is because my people or my past or because my family was wronged or blah, blah, blah. Fuck that. Most people act on what's right in front of them. What can I grab? And the only thing that comes from the past is justification on some level that you think you can act like a fucking monster because other people will let you right now, not because I deserve to act like a monster, but because people will give you room to act like a monster if you bullshit them enough about the past. And that's what
Mhm.
Russia has effectively tried to do with this whole like denazification horseshit that they were passing around about Ukraine, which
Yeah.
died a raggedy ass death last year and
Yeah.
multiple times, but we haven't heard shit about that since, and especially since the Israeli Hamas conflict has started anew, where they're fucking bringing Hamas in, where RT is fucking, rappelling down ropes into the tunnels and going, kicking the tires and going, oh, nice digs, that, like, fuck those guys. You can't at one we're getting all the Nazis out while attacking a country with a Jewish president and then siding with fucking Hamas, not the Palestinians, with Hamas.
Yeah.
Fuck off. They didn't invite the fucking PLA or the PLO or the fucking PA and all the other variant groups. Right. They didn't bring members of Fatah in to kind of reignite support for a more stable government inside the Palestinian territory.
Problematic for Israel is, problematic in the immediate term, but probably long term better.
Yes.
If the Israelis were to support, hey, why doesn't the Palestinian Authority take custody of Gaza, sort of thing? But they don't think that way. You're right. They think about what's right in front of me, the immediate concern that I have. The other thing that strikes me about all this is that also it's been said, there's a great vlog that I did. Sadly, the sound is not very good at it, but at the very beginning of the war, I interviewed a Ukrainian historian, a history professor from a university actually here in Lviv.
Yeah.
And he said, he made a very good point to me, and it's stuck with me through the entire war, and it's prevalent to what we're talking about.
Mac.
Is that he said the problem is that, like, you look at America and it's make America great again, or you look at Russia and it's a callback and a restoration of a former glory of the Soviet Union.
Right. Glory days. Here's some little young girls. They're all fucking assholes in a Bruce Springsteen song.
Desperate to reclaim a past glory, whereas Ukraine has never had a golden era,
right?
Albeit, way back in like the 9th century. But that's why, like, Ukrainians by and large are very optimistic about the future. They're not, because they're not hearkening back to some former glory like the Russians are, which is forcing Russia and Putin and those who kind of fall into his ilk desperately hold on to this past glory, but all that's really happening is you're hastening your own destruction.
Right. It limits how they can respond because they must act inside the parameters of still being a great world power and still having this fucking grudge, and they can't drop it and address rights. Ironically, if they would drop the pretense, they could address what's right in front of them, and they would have never had this fucking problem in the first place. But because and again, I would argue this has to do with the fucking oil and gas leases, specifically the natural gas leases off of Odessa and around Crimea that were found in around 2010 to 2012. And the fact that if you have Crimea, you have 256 miles off the coast of it, anything found in that. And if you look at their whole, want the Black Sea, want all this stuff, they just want to gather up all the fucking natural gas and control Europe that way. That was the plan a decade ago, right? It worked in allowing them to fuck Ukraine in 2014. That's the singular reason they were allowed to get rid of this shit, was because Europe was relying on it. Biden didn't fall for it a second time. Now that he's in charge, he was like, nope, not buying it. Fuck you. But back then, everybody was like, whoa, that happened quickly. What are they? And they got to get all those gas leases around Crimea are technically now the property of Russia until they're run out. They can't drill anything or do anything there because it's been a constant state of war. But the idea is, okay, we're going to have to wipe out Ukraine so we can take that gas out and nobody can fuck with us anymore. We'll take Odessa all the way to fucking Moldova, or whatever their little area is.
Soloviev just said, we won't stop at Kiev. We don't care about the territory.
Stop at Berlin.
He said we don't care about the territory. We care about our sense of security. So Europe be damned. If we have to take over all of Europe so that we feel safe because of our history or because of our mentality or because of whatever, go fuck yourself. No.
And how much do these motherfuckers sound like these assholes who want an AR-15 so they can fight back against a tyrannical government? And I want as much ammunition as I can feel secure against the entire U.S. military inside the United States. Well, While what? You drive to the fucking mall in your truck? What are you talking about? Nobody's coming for you. That was the biggest issue with Russia in the
Yeah.
beginning of this shit. And even in 2014, nobody gives a fuck. I think that was almost more at play than I would argue on a personal level, that this recognition that not only is it didn't even matter that Russia was a paper tiger, because we didn't want anything from them. At a certain point, they become irrelevant. They're fighting for relevance in this situation. You have to deal with me. They're fucking Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction. I will not be ignored, right?
Yeah.
You're sorry, you're too nuts to be fuckable. Nobody cares anymore. You're just a fucking island, and Dubai is taking all your glitzy bullshit.
Do you
So,
really think we're going to fight you for some fucking raw natural resource mine that you have out in Tunguska or somewhere in
yeah,
the middle of Siberia? That's more. We'll let you. I'll tell you what. Here's the deal, Russia.
yeah,
You rip it out of the ground. You go through all the because you love your land
yes,
so much. You rip it out of the ground. You bring it to market. We'll buy it. We
yeah.
don't have to occupy Siberia anymore.
Nobody cares. Nobody
Well,
fucking cares.
it's not efficient. It's not
Cat says,
efficient.
Cat says, "Too nuts to be fuckable" needs to be a musical. I think that is the name of the Fatal Attraction musical. Or it's not the, maybe not the name. I think it's the hit song from it.
Well,
She's too nuts to be fuckable. She's a, yeah. Anyways, it's a tap number. It has to
the
be.
other big news I saw, which kind of ties into this conversation as well, about like there being a brighter future for Ukraine as opposed to a Russia desperately clinging on to its glory days. I guess
Yep.
today it was anticipated, and I just looked while we were chatting. The European Union has greenlit further steps for
Yeah, for
Ukraine to
Ukraine.
actually become part of the European Union.
Yep.
It's over, man. It's
Yep.
over.
Yeah.
Go home. Just
Yeah.
go put down your
Get
guns,
the
go
fuck
home, get the
out.
fuck out of this country.
Right.
You lost, son. You
Again,
lost. You
in
gambled,
a
you
in a
lost.
fight between two groups where if one side dropped their arms, the war would be over, and if the other side dropped their arms, they would be over. I'm on their side
Yeah.
because that's the side of peace. The side of peace is the disarmament and the fucking off of the people who would continue the war if given the chance. In this case, Russia and Hamas are the exact same fucking group. If Israel dropped arms against Hamas, not the Palestinians, Hamas specifically in this situation, Israel would be over in a matter of weeks. Like that, it would just be a slaughter. The same thing with Ukraine. If Ukraine just had a ceasefire, like, okay, we'll stop, Russia wouldn't stop, and they would fucking wipe everybody out.
No.
So the idea that somebody
They
would be
might
on their
fall.
side in either of their
Yeah,
sides in this is just absurd.
it's I know. I know. And it's just and those who keep,
Mm,
blaming the West or blaming America or whatever.
hmm
No, these are assholes. These are
Yeah,
bad people doing
yeah,
bad things. And whatever their fucking motivation in it doesn't matter to me. They're, just, and I've been saying it for a long time. It's just drop your guns and go home because you can't win here. It's not and this is presupposing that like Russia occupies Ukraine. Let's say something bizarre happens and
right.
every single Ukrainian weapon system fails simultaneously for some bizarre reason, and the
hmm
Russians are actually able to kind of flood into Ukraine, and from the Polish border all the way back to Donbass is now occupied by Russians, which by the way they don't have the manpower to do. But
Right.
we're in this fantasy scenario.
Yeah,
Let's say that happens. Then there would be an insurrection, or not an insurrection, then there would be an insurgency. There would be guerrilla fighting. This,
yeah,
I mean, there's no, there's no good end
yeah.
for Russia
It's
in this.
it would be uglier and uglier and uglier as
Yep,
time went on. I mean,
yep.
if you think they caught a lot of shit in Afghanistan, good lord.
hmm Well, again,
Yeah.
I mean, the facts speak for themselves. They've lost um, 10 times as many deaths uh, in a tenth of the time as what happened in Afghanistan. So they're up around 300,000. The death toll in Afghanistan over a decade was around 30,000, if I'm remembering my facts correctly.
hmm
And that broke the back of the Soviet Union. I
Yes.
mean, this is this is catastrophic for Russia, and I don't know what it's going to take. I guess I mean I can hypothesize that a way to end this is that Vladimir Putin slips in the shower, and that's it,
Right.
or has a massive coronary at 3 a.m. in the morning, wink wink,
Yeah.
and that's it. But
I think,
there's no
yeah.
upside for them.
This is a good time to revisit one of my favorite parts of the Russia Afghanistan storyline is the Tashbek presidential palace coup. For
Mm.
everybody who thinks, for whatever reason, that the United States is behind every coup on the planet, and that if we just and by the way, MI6 was involved in the Iranian one. The United States was like, "You want to what now?" But we'll get to that at another time. But the fact that they tried to kill the president of the leader of Afghanistan by poisoning him, and he was saved by Coca-Cola, is one of my favorite historical facts, because the fact that he was drinking a carbonated beverage, specifically Coca-Cola, this motherfucker who is saying they don't need the West, and our people are proud people and blah blah blah, is hooked on Coca-Cola like he's fucking Tom Cruise's character in Tropic Thunder, and it saved his fucking life. And at one point he wakes up from a fucking half-ass coma after being poisoned, and the Russians are at the gate. They're surrounding his castle and they're there to kill him. And they fucking do. They storm in, they kill all of his people, and then they shoot him and then throw a grenade at his body. They kill his 14-year-old son and everybody there. It's fucking horrifying.
Burn
Yes.
down the palace.
They burned down the palace. Yeah, it's fucking
I got a
awful.
great photograph. I got a great photograph of myself in front of that. It's a beautiful, or it would be a beautiful palace if they ever actually restored it. But the Afghans,
yeah,
that gets into a whole.
there's a Soviet troops surrounding it in 1979. They fucking, and there's videos all over online that tell the history of this. If you ever want to go on a deep dive on YouTube, it's really fun. They surround this place, and he tells his dudes to stand down for a little while because he's convinced the Russians are there to have his back, and everybody around him is going, "Hey, dope fiend, they're here to murder you, dumbass." And he's like, "No, of course not." And they end up they kill all of his elite guard. Then they roll in, they fucking murder him, and then they spend the next 8 years. However long after that.
It was a 10-year war. It was
10 years. Just
80,
get
80. No, was it
80,
82 to 92.
Yeah. So much firing. When Fakir
That.
arrived at the defense ministry, listen to this. Army Chief Yakub Khan was at a meeting with several Soviet military advisors in his office. After greeting the guests, Fakir returned to sit down on a couch where there was a burst of gunfire. He dashed to an adjacent room to take cover. After a few minutes, Yakub Khan entered the room and fell on the bed. Fakir says he had been shot twice and seriously wounded. Minutes later, Khan died. Drenched in Khan's blood, Fakir grabbed his handgun and aimed it at the door. There was so much firing he couldn't hear anything, Fakir says. Retelling the story, he slowly trudges through the National Museum, which back then housed the Defense Ministry. The Soviets were throwing hand grenades, firing rockets, and using Kalashnikov. They look like Russians, they told him. He's like, but that can't be. They can't be Russian. They're my friends. It
was 79, 89. No, this is, look, I mean, there would be no Kim legacy in North Korea. There would be no DPRK without, direct Soviet and Russian involvement. I mean,
that's right.
This idea that I mean, look, this gets us into really sticky territory, but I have said for years, as somebody who's traveled the world, I've been involved with many, many wars. I've been involved with many, many conflicts. Most of them, yes, have involved the United States. But the thing is that nation states really aren't that much different. The only difference is the size and the scale of what they're capable of.
Right.
We can talk about there are shades of gray here involved. But all nation states pursue their interests, and oftentimes through violent covert activities. And if you don't think the Chinese do, if you don't think that the Russians do, hell, if you don't think the Iranians or,
Go
if they
spend a week in Africa. Do
yeah,
it.
yes,
Go spend,
yeah,
don't spend 2 days. Don't fly to fucking Chad or South Sudan or fucking Nigeria because it's a good tourist destination, or Ghana or any of that. Like, no, go and spend a week there and talk to the locals, and they will start spilling. This is the same thing that happens when I went to China. It's like, first 2 days you're there, everybody's just like, oh yeah, it's great. And then 2 days in, you're sitting at a coffee shop or a tea shop with somebody, and then they really start telling you the story. That's what you got to
no,
say. This line I fucking loved. Waziri, which was one of the his secretary, it was the con secretary. It was con secretary. He goes, I got up, I grabbed my Kalashnikov, I opened the window. Says Waziri, who was 26 years old at this time. He goes, I saw there was gunfire coming down from there, so I fired a few rounds. Waziri says the attackers were wearing yellow uniforms and woolen hats. I thought to myself, they look like Russians. He says. He then stormed into Khan's office, where he says he saw a Soviet translator shoot his boss. The translator the Russians sent shot the Khan dead while Waziri was out of the room.
mm-hmm.
The translator.
Oh, good. I mean, Jesus, even think about some of the awful things that they did at the end of the Second World War as they were advancing. I mean, they let the Poles die fighting the Nazis, having told them, we're going to come help you defend. But instead, what they did was let the Nazis do the dirty work of killing what would have been Polish opposition to a Soviet occupation. The sad thing is that all human beings are capable of wonderful things. They're also capable of really, really shitty things. And it's just, we fixate on America as Americans, perhaps.
Because we can fix it. Because we can fix it. Because we can go, this is wrong, we don't want to do that anymore. That's why we fixate on it. That's the purpose of it, and it's got value.
Yeah, and when we react to our better nature, it's great. But the criticisms that are leveled against American empire, or whatever the hell you want to call it, Pax Americana, is that we're freaking rich. We're huge and rich, and we have a lot of weaponry because we made the decision to buy a bunch of weaponry. So it's not like we're any different than any other nation state, any other nation on the face of the planet. Yes, we have some differences because we make our own decisions, and we're a democracy and answerable to an electorate. But at the end of the day, the big difference is just we're bigger and have more money. It's not like we act.
But those are part and parcel. That's not an accident of the circumstance. It is the reason we're bigger and we have more money is because we do have more say in our government, and we do have more say in our economy than other places do. And the reason why there's we talk about in the United States the financial divide between the rich and the poor, or the rich, like class warfare in the United States, which is nowhere near the fucking scale of places like Russia or China, or it's fucking ridiculous. Yeah, right.
The class system is alive and well.
Jesus Christ, right. So this is, by the way, this is what we were talking about earlier. The EU ambassador to Ukraine said even Putin can't stop Ukraine's ascension to the EU. Ukraine is now one step closer to its strategic goal of becoming a member of the European Union. On November 8th, the European Commission published its annual enlargement report. In it, the Commission confirmed that Ukraine had completed enough of the steps to laid out in 7 recommendations it received from the EU last year. This, by the way, goes back to the whole fixing corruption, recognizing it's there and getting rid of it, which led to the same steps after the first Russian attack in 2014, where the Biden, was put in charge of Ukraine by the Obama administration to try and help them weed that shit out so that they could get a toehold to get this process started, because this is really more about, this has nothing to do with fucking NATO. This has to do with EU connection by Ukraine, because EU connection with Ukraine means they are a powerhouse of both just economically because of the rare earth minerals, quote unquote rare earth minerals, oil and gas that they have, and grain. Yeah.
Agribusiness, man.
Right.
This is the breadbasket of not just
Europe,
but arguably the world.
Absolutely. I mean, it's there are people in Africa who will starve to death, who have, I would argue, starved to death in the last year and a half because of Russia cutting off the grain shipments. In the process, even slowing them down affects real human lives, and they don't give a rat fuck. But whatever.
I tell you what, if you got a few bucks, you got a few bucks and you're looking for an investment, you could do far worse than Ukraine, man. This place,
Right.
that article, wherever, what was that, Guardian or something? Where
So
was that?
this is the Kiev Independent, but it was a direct interview with
Right,
her from the European
you
Union
know,
with
but it's also you know,
Katerina Madronova. Yeah.
I mean, it's 100% true.
Yeah.
This country is going to be, and you're also right to point out that
Mm-hmm.
the other thing that this does is it breaks with Russia categorically. It's
Yep.
done. It's over. That
Yeah.
relationship, whatever it was, it is done.
Yeah.
Ukraine is now a European nation. Not only is it a European nation, it's going to be a powerhouse, man. This is
Yeah.
by European standards.
Even their
This is
tech
one of the
sector,
biggest countries in Europe.
their tech sector
Yeah.
it rivals Germany's already, and they've been doing it with both arms tied behind their back for the last fucking decade. It's
And
really
despite
impressive.
the casualties that they've lost and the amount of their population that they've lost, they don't need to be importing outside labor. They're
Right.
going to, there's going to be a workforce here that
Yep.
is formidable as well. So I mean they might be a few of them missing limbs or something, but the
Mm-hmm.
population is still, we're still going to be, especially when
Yep.
the expat, when the community that fled and is
Yeah.
still abroad comes back, we'll be back up to around a
Yeah.
40 million person population here.
Yep.
This country, once this war is over, and we've talked about this several times as well, especially in the beginning when the Europeans were kind of dragging their feet. I
Yep.
had a really strong sneaking suspicion because they were afraid of a strong Ukraine, because this is going to dominate the continent. This is going to be one of the most powerful countries in Europe and
Yep.
arguably in the world, because there's so much resource here, and it's
Well,
such a
and
big.
you could see that was why one of the reasons why Germany was dragging their feet a little bit, because that's their
So,
biggest competitor, and
I think
because
so
yeah,
badly.
the
I
chances of
really
there
do.
becoming like a Ukrainian electric car that dominates Europe is incredibly high
Oh
for
yeah.
potential. Once they're not, constantly under the threat of war, and you could argue that that's the pressure that Russia was trying to put on Germany to choke Ukraine, because if they're just allowed to operate as a free society, then I think there's a real chance not only would they dwarf Germany, but they would definitely dwarf Russia's in short order.
Easily.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, easily. And I mean, think of all the factories that are being built currently. Yeah, they're making tanks and armored cars, but when the war's over,
yeah,
tractors and
right.
EV cars,
Same thing that
yeah,
happened to the United
well,
States peace dividend after World War II. Same fucking
exactly
thing.
right. Exactly right. Or
It's
or
yeah,
or for that matter, all the hackers and all the guys who've been
tech
fighting
guys. Yeah,
online,
the
all
red
the guys
teams. Yeah,
yeah, I'm telling you, when this war is over, this country is going to be very formidable, and
yep,
especially if they can get rid of the corruption, which they're going to have to do if they're going to join the EU,
sure.
which they really do want to do, and it's not insurmountable. I would argue there's just as much corruption in places like Romania, which are part of the
Right.
EU.
Absolutely.
Um,
Jesus Christ. Turkey right now? Are you kidding me?
oh
Like
my
the
God,
whole
yeah,
economy is under the table in US dollars. The fucking Turkish lira or whatever, I think that's what their currency is called. It's a 230% inflation on that. Nobody uses it anymore to actually fucking buy anything. So how are they getting US dollars in if it's not a direct exchange with the United States? Well, they're doing it under the table. They fucking one of the reason why Turkey has been engaged with, in this anti-Israel bullshit and this footsie with Russia is because they rely on them for this underground, like the underground railroad of U.S. currency, if you will, to flood into their country, because we're not giving it to them. We're sending pallets to Iraq to stabilize their economy all the time, but we don't do it with Turkey, yet they use it more than Iraq does. It's so weird. Like, and the fact that this isn't a regular point of conversation, I think points to a failure of the news cycle in our country, because again, what bleeds leads and all that kind of shit.
oh
But
yeah, whatever
it's
shiny object.
I think this is fucking fascinating. And if
I do too.
people
I
talk
do
about
too,
like
I just we're in a very interesting transitional period,
Yeah.
um, in a lot of areas, in a lot of regions of the world, not least of which here in Europe because of this war. But I mean the Middle East, obviously, and what's happening over in Asia. Um, and we'll see what happens in the next election. I'm pretty darn sure I know who's going to be president in
Mm.
2024, but
Yep.
it's the
Yeah.
electoral college and all the rest of it. But if liberal democracy can survive this period and comes out the victor, it's we enter potentially a much better world than we
Yes.
have lived in a long, long time.
Right.
I'm again, and you and I share this attitude. I know because we've talked about this many times. Decide to be an optimist and make that optimism come true. And
Yes.
I am 100% optimistic about Ukraine, and I am 100% optimistic about the fact that this is the high watermark for autocracies, and they're screwed. They're screwed.
Hmm.
Autocratic leaders are screwed because they know that they cannot. The World Wide Web is out there. There's where we are gathering together as a globe. We're getting closer, not farther apart.
Yeah.
We it's these are
Well, and
the
if you
last
look at
anyways.
the best example I can give is like when people talk about like AI in China, for example. And one of the things that the biggest benefit that AI has in terms of economic value, not talking about military where you can use algorithms to track down people and like run your state like a prison. That stuff, that's what China's been using AI for a good while. That's the type of AI that they have sold to Russia. But it's not the kind that furthers your economy. It's not the kind that adds to the wealth of the country. It's not that in a way that grows your country at all. And that kind, which is the Chat GPT coding, language translation, art generation stuff that you see us, in the West using all over the place. Not only are they not developing it at the same clip we are because they can't, their societal structure and their governmental structure won't allow them to. You can't have a chat GPT that will answer any question you give it in a society like China's because the CCP has to okay all the fucking answers. Their version of chat GPT that they showed off a little while ago was simply a translation bot that went to ChatGPT and then they built a sub bot off of ChatGPT that just made certain conversations off limits. That's all they did. And it translated literally. So the Chinese version of ChatGPT doesn't speak Chinese. It's a direct translation. So there are all these colloquial phrases for certain types of food in China. Like I don't know, like duck on fire and shit like that. And when they were trying to make menus using their version of ChatGPT, it was literally just instead of showing the dish, which you'd recognize as the dish, it was just making a picture of a duck on fire. Well, why is it doing that? It's not because it doesn't recognize the characters in the order that you would find on a fucking menu. It's because it translated to English, sent it to ChatGPT, came back in English and translated back to Chinese, and made the image that came back was from someone like equivalent in English going a duck on fire. Like that's it. There's no
Well,
fucking way Russia can allow
no,
something like
and or
ChatGPT to be
not just
used by the public.
sure
Oh
because
yeah,
it
Chinese urine
empowers
eggs. Right. That's a real thing
in
though.
yes, it is. I've heard about those. It empowers the individual,
Yes.
and if you empower the individual, there's so much happening right now in terms of technology, and I don't think we're too far off topic from talking about Ukraine and Russia because I think this is part of it. Is that there's this very real fear in the Kremlin of individuals becoming empowered within
Yeah.
themselves, and they have a long history of being, having a very small strata of ruling class, then everybody else is just,
Right.
peasant. If you start empowering individuals, whether or not it's done through a chat GTP or whether
GPT.
it's
Yeah.
done through simply internet and the world getting smaller and also real and crossing borders because languages are being broken down, we're getting into a period potentially, and I'm again optimistic
Me
this will
too.
happen, where it's where the autocracies can't exist when
Right.
their citizenry are empowered and individuals are empowered. And a lot of that is what's happening here because
Because most of
Ukrainians
them
don't
are based, yeah, most of those
enter.
countries are based on gatekeeping, both of knowledge and tools. And there is a reason
Security,
why.
law,
Yes.
language, everything. It's all
Everything
got to be
has to
simple.
be okayed by the powers that be. And for all the
Mhm.
fucking bullshit that you hear right wingers talking about censorship in the United States while they're in front of a mic on the internet saying whatever the fuck they want, and the only ramifications they see is how much another company that they're using for fucking free, like YouTube or Twitch or one of these things, kicks them to the curb for violating the terms of service, and suddenly that's a violation of their fucking free speech rights. Hey, motherfucker, you can go on there and work for free. You just can't get commercials. Sorry. So are you really, is it your freedom of speech or is it your paydom of speech, you dumb
Yeah.
motherfucker? That part drives me crazy. But
Oh, it drives me nuts. They don't
there's
know what
why.
true repression looks like. They haven't
No.
got a clue. Haven't
Yeah.
got a clue.
And there's a reason why the United States, by creating the intranet, connecting the DoD sites throughout the United States and upgrading it and eventually passing it on to, where again, this is Al Gore being the guy at the meeting who understood the concept behind it and said, why don't we just give it to the public to use? It's there. People could do shit with this. There's a communication base. It's like another set of phone lines, but for data, it would be way better than faxes and all this shit. Like that's why everybody talks about how Al Gore invented the internet or whatever. It's because he thought of turn the internet loose so that people can use it as a commercial property, just like radio waves were initially. That you were allowed to use it within certain parameters, and that's exactly what fucking happened. You can't create something like that. By the way, Russia and China both had an intranet and still do for their military.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
weren't about to fucking set them loose so the public can use them. And even in the case of like Chinese and Russian internet, they have a fucking switch that they can turn it off anytime they want to. And the Chinese
Yeah.
have that switch pulled all the fucking time. Russia does it sometimes, but largely because they want to do business with the West and pretend for the last little bit. Now they've started to shut it off. I lost my VK account, god damn it, because of this war.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, well, it's offered as one of the things on the Restream site that I use, and I was like, that'll be hilarious. I fucking hate these guys, so I'll live stream my show in Russia. VK is the Russian Facebook. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, I set up a page on there and I live streamed to it, and all of a sudden my page just fucking vanished. That's true. And in China, when I was there, I had to use a VPN. They look the other way when foreigners do it, and they lock up their own fucking people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And somebody was saying, let's see, still has an internet for themselves. Somebody said U.S. has 2 internet, citizens can only use 1. That's not an internet. That's an intranet. For the record, and that's the difference. We use the internet. They use the intranet.
The U.S. military has a thing called SIPRNet.
Yeah.
And it's
which is internal.
I've been on SIPRNet before.
Yeah.
When I was given access to it when I was deputy bureau chief for CBS in Baghdad, because we were doing so much interaction with the U.S. military that they gave me limited access to it.
Yeah.
And it's basically it's so much more pared down. It's not, there's very little graphics, very little. It's just a way to communicate.
Hey man, it's why the deck and inside a fucking X-wing looks like it does. Because when push comes to shove, you don't need pretty graphics in a spaceship when you're fighting off the X-wing, or fighting off the TIE fighters. You just need to know how the targeting fucking thing works, and it has to be big dumb graphics following the goddamn thing around, right? And that's honest to God, you don't need a lot of pretty extra shit because it's goddamn distracting. Anybody who knows the internet is built to be distracting. In the military, like, stop, you don't want it to be pretty, you just want it to be functional, right? So, anyways, we're getting near the bottom of the hour, and thanks for jumping in here. I know you raced to get in here today, and we'll see you on Saturday. Well done.
I'll probably most likely be back in Kiev, but I will talk to you on Saturday. We'll do the radio show.
Yeah, wherever you are, we'll do that. Christina says it looks like we both need a nap. That's very sweet of you. I appreciate it. I definitely do. Phil probably does as well. But I
Yeah.
think we put on a great fucking show today, even in spite of that, and great conversations. And I would suggest people dive into the Storm 333 attack in Afghanistan. If you're feeling like you got a history boner, go look that shit up, because it is a fucking, like, if you think that like the deposing of the Shah in Iran is a story,
Yeah.
holy shit.
Yeah. And
Like, there weren't,
Afghanistan was a bizarre, different place back then before the Soviets rocked up. I
right.
mean, it was like girls in miniskirts and stuff at Kabul
Yeah.
University. You
Yeah,
can look
same
at
thing with Iran. Like, it was
out
so
there.
fucking Western, it was crazy. And it will be again. I'm telling you, one of the outsized things that might actually happen as a result of the Israeli Hamas dust up that's going on right now that will ratchet up
You know?
is the very strong possibility of the deposing of the Iranian regime by its own people or by outside forces. If Israel decides to fucking, like, they've had enough and they do something really major, it's a strong possibility, because Iran does not have the ability to, like, to push. They've got a big military. They're not fucking around. They definitely have, of all those states, they probably have the biggest military, and they intend to use it. So it's not like they're being caught with their pants down or just being acted on like Russia did with Ukraine. They're funding terrorist organizations. They're flooding this shit in there for a reason. So if they got their ass handed to them, it would be because they deserved it. But it won't be the Iranian people. It will be the Iranian regime, much like Hamas as opposed to the Palestinians. There's a lot more crossover amongst the people if they're allowed to do it. The same thing I believe with the Russian people and the Ukrainians, that if it wasn't for the leadership of Russia insisting on this shit, that they could get
Yep.
along and will pretty quickly. I mean, there'll be definitely some hurt feelings.
Rough,
Be rough
eventually.
Yeah, there's no, if you, let's say if you met in a bar or something, or a coffee shop or something, you both spoke Russian, or you both spoke Ukrainian, or both. The first jump wouldn't be to fuck you. You might eventually find out they're Russian and get kind of like, I don't know. But if you're just chit-chatting human to human in the moment, you might be okay. And I think a lot of people are way closer to that. Again, there's 8 billion people.
There's a lot of anger right now in Ukraine, but
yes,
I would argue justifiable. And even if it's not logical, that anger floods over to just your average Russian.
Absolutely. It'll carry forward for a while, but one to one, if you didn't know, sight unseen, like the Pepsi challenge style, if you weren't the wiser that this person was, on the other side of the argument. There's a shit ton of Russians that fled the fucking country, that if you met a Russian, that fucked off to Dagestan or fucking Romania or some shit like that, if a Ukrainian met them in a bar, they would have a lot more to share about this war than they would to fight about. So I mean, that's where I think the future lies. And again, the countries that are able to trust their citizens with a certain amount of freedom, and again, managed freedom, because we don't need fucking citizens to have nuclear weapons and Gatling guns and fucking mounted 50 cals on their goddamn cars and shit. And child porn is not free speech, no matter what Mike Johnson and everybody in the Republican Party tries to tell you. That normal limitations on that, so we can all fucking get on with our lives. Terms of service for democracy, if you will, are necessary. But the countries that allow the most of it within that reasonable zone will be the ones that thrive. And the ones that have to choke it off, like Russia, like China, like Iran, are headed for the fucking trash heap. And they know it. And a lot of them are just battening down the hatches and building the walls around themselves so they could just ride out the bullshit as long as possible.
Let me just make it to my deathbed, and let me leave my riches to my descendants.
That's right. So they can bug the fuck off and go to Disneyland and pretend that that's not how they got their wealth.
Yeah.
Motherfuckers.
But
anyways,
it's over. It's done. The era of autocracy,
that era is dying. Yep.
High watermark, and it's going to die off. So.
Agreed. And on that note of hope, Philip Ittner, everybody. Ittner Philip on the Shitter Machine. And of course, you can follow him on his and watch his vlogs, even the ones with bad sound. And he'll be back with us on Saturday for the radio show, wherever he may be in Kiev, and we'll catch everybody up on this. But the gains across the Dnipro, will be keeping an eye on that.
We will.
And that's just, but yeah, we'll get into a whole nother hour if I go off on that. So thanks so
A
much
whole
for
bunch
being
of
with us,
stuff
brother.
coming up. It's going to be an
Yeah,
interesting winter.
it will absolutely be that. So thanks so much. Take care of yourself, and we will see you on Saturday, my friend. All
Bye,
right.
everybody. Thanks for tuning
Peace.
in. All right. Talk
Thanks.
soon.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, brother. And thank you, chat room, as well, for joining us today. Don't forget, on your way out the door, give a thumbs up to the show, like it, help me boost this thing out. Also, we cut the regular show, thanks to our dear friend CSL, the afternoon show, into little clips, and I know most of you who watch the regular show on the don't need the smaller clips that are 20 minutes or an hour or whatever. But if you could just fly by and give them a thumbs up or write a little comment or something if you feel like I love this bit, or share it. That really helps us out. That would really help us expand the show into other arenas as we continue to grow. We cleared that 58, yes, and don't forget the Venmo is right over there. Support the show, and patreon.com/HalSparks. We love you guys, and I will see you later. I'm going to go collapse.